Another week goes by, another week we take a look at what's going on in the 2026 quarterback class. Now, you guys know, you've watched my channel, you've watched my coverage on the 2026 quarterback class. I've had not just my opinion on it, but the opinion of people who are respected within the draft community. People like Corey Kinnon, people like JP Acosta, people like Derek Bell of Steelers DB. You know, different opinions of different people who watch different teams and had different focuses throughout the season, but all respected about their draft opinion. They've been pretty adamant that they feel like this is a solid quarterback draft class, and I would agree with what they've been saying about it. This was not the most impressive week for this draft class. Ty Simpson was on a bye. Dante Moore was not very impressive. Fernando Mendoza was not very impressive. Lenore Sellers continues to be a victim of what's going on at South Carolina. Brendan Sorsby was disappointing in his game versus Utah. There was one player who did stand out. His name is Darien Mensah out of Duke, but of all the six guys we talked about potentially having a shot to be a first-round pick, Darien Mensah is the one where you're the most questionable about if he's going to come out of college football this year or if he's going to go and declare for the draft. So either if he's going to go back to college football or declare. The reason for that is Darien Mensah is one of the most highest paid NIL players of all time, got a 2-year, $8 million deal to go to Duke last offseason. So you would have to imagine around $4 million for him to stay in college. And if you look at the evaluation of that far as what you can make if you get drafted, you're talking about having to be the 17th pick of the draft or better before you're making more money than what Darien Mensah is making right now. So not the greatest week for this class, and we're kind of into the late season low for a lot of these teams. Like Fernando Mendoza in Indiana, they aren't going to play a over 500 team until the end of the season if they make the Big Ten championship game or if they play a playoff game, right? So the rest of the teams they play, I believe, are all under 500. Now, Alabama has some interesting games left with Ty Simpson. The Oregon Ducks have some interesting games left. I think 3 of their 4 last games are ranked opponents. Duke is Duke, so they're not that much better than their competition, so it doesn't really matter if they're playing high-ranked opponents. Same thing with like Cincinnati and Brendan Sorsby. But for those guys who are on those like elite teams in college football, elite programs, or teams that are just having really good years like Indiana, the intriguing part of the season is kind of in a lull as we wait for the postseason to fall in place, as the college football playoff rankings to come out, and that to really shake things up. And then you have Lenore Sellers, whose team's not even good. So real quick, allow me to thank my sponsor for today's video, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code WORSTTAKE. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. So there is that. So we're in kind of a bit of a lull here as far as what we're going to see here. Obviously, once the playoffs start, then there's going to be some big expectations for what you see out of this class. But yeah, wasn't the best day for this class. I thought Fernando Mendoza was perfectly serviceable in his victory against Maryland. Had some nice throws for sure. Had an interception early on, battled back from it. It wasn't a performance that made me feel any differently about him positively or negatively. Just kind of felt the same about Fernando Mendoza there. Ty Simpson literally didn't play, so there's nothing really to gain or lose from what he did. Dante Moore, they won the game by like 14 points against Wisconsin. He didn't have an impressive day. I don't even think he broke 100 passing yards. I think he threw the ball like 15 times. They were dominating the game on the ground, so it really just didn't require much from him. Not much you can read out of him. Lenore Sellers, he's an impossible evaluation at this point. You're at the point with him, you just got to go down to what his tools are, and that takes him out of that top part of that class and puts him more in the middle. He's kind of this luxury item that only a team that has an established quarterback can go after, and that's not going to be a team drafting in the top 5. Late first round guys like Darien Mensah and Sorsby. I thought Sorsby was not great against Utah. He wasn't terrible, but he wasn't great. Mensah was the guy that I have tagged as like having the best performance of the week. Over 300 yards against Clemson defense, 4 touchdowns, was just absolute nails in that game. And he is somebody who is interesting, right? Because I don't know if he's going to declare for the draft this year. He's super young. He has $4 million waiting on him to go back to Duke. The ACC is not the toughest conference in the world, so you can reasonably see, with how he's playing, he goes back to Duke. They make the ACC championship next year. They get into the playoffs. He can catapult his way into the top of the 2027 class, which right now, me personally, I know some people are high on the 2027 class. I think it's a little weaker than the 2026 class right now. And I think that a guy like Darien Mensah might see that as an opportunity to say, hey, look, I could catapult to the top of this class here. Whereas with this class, I think he's going to have a hard ceiling as like the 4th best quarterback in this draft class. Next year, he might be the number 1 or number 2 guy. Because again, it's just that class is just filled with guys who have not had breakout seasons, and he is having a second breakout season, right? Was really good his freshman year at Tulane. And then now he's blowing out the water what he did at Tulane at Duke with a higher level of competition. There's really nobody in that 2026 class that has 2 seasons comparable to what Darien Mensah has right now. But if you're looking at this class, Ty Simpson's more impressive. Dante Moore has better tools. And Fernando Mendoza has been much more impressive, right? Like, so he's kind of in this Goldilocks zone for this class where he's kind of capped out at QB4 here, but maybe next year he'd be QB1. But if you get a first round grade and you might be like a top 10, 15 pick, are you really going to say no to that? But again, the difference between him isn't like going to be $7 million. It's just going to be a difference of what, if he goes 8th overall, it's what, $8 million a year. So it's a $4 million difference. He already has $4 million in the bank. He's going to be an interesting one to track. I don't know what he's going to do, but if he does come out, he's somebody to watch, and he's somebody I think the Browns will have a great deal of interest in. The Ivy League, well, not an Ivy League background, but went to Tulane, which is a highly regarded educational school, transferred to Duke, another highly regarded educational school. Somebody who tends to value that sort of thing, really heady guy. And I think the most impressive thing about Darien Mensah is he's really aggressive as a passer, right? You're talking about somebody who's not settling for the check down a lot. Like, if you are tired of how Dylan Gabriel plays football, he is the anti-Dylan Gabriel, right? He is attacking downfield. Average air yards per attempt above 10 yards. He is constantly chucking the ball downfield. They don't have average depth of target on here on College Football Reference, but I'd imagine he's pretty high there. Really aggressive guy, really confident thrower. His last month of football has just been incredible. His last 5 weeks of football has just been incredible. We're talking about, when he got used, he had this bad game against Tulane early in the season. I thought that was really concerning for him. But it seems like after that first month of the season, he's figured out what he's needed to figure out in this Duke system, because he's had 13 touchdowns, 1,500 yards, no interceptions, 71.3 completion percentage with a quarterback rating of 171 and a record of 4-1. Only loss was to, at the time, undefeated Georgia Tech. He's been playing some excellent football down the stretch. You could argue, if he was on a better team right now, you might be hearing some noise about him being a Heisman candidate. 21 touchdowns, 2 interceptions on the year. So it's not even like the beginning of the season was that bad for him. And 22,572 yards. He had 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions his freshman year at Tulane. So just continuing what he's done at the American and then bettering it once he's gotten to a better conference in the ACC. Darien Mensah, he's going to be one of the most interesting guys in this class. I just have no clue what he's going to do as far as declaring or not, because I could see in this class where there are just a couple of prospects I think are just always going to, as long as they play a certain level of football, are just going to be ranked higher than them. Like Ty Simpson's just going to be ranked higher than him. Mendoza's just going to be ranked higher than him. Dante Moore is the one where it gets a little questionable, but Dante Moore has a better arm. He's a little bit better of an athlete. So he's going to be ranked higher than him if all things are similar. That puts him at quarterback 4 here. And then you got to factor in Lenore Sellers. Lenore Sellers is having a pretty shitty season, but he's 6'3", 250 pounds, and he can probably run a 4.3. And he has pretty solid tape and really strong tools, right? So maybe even for some teams, they're going to look at a more heady, more cerebral guy like a Darien Mensah and not be as interested as Lenore Sellers. So maybe even for some teams, he's capped out at 5, QB 5 in this class. And maybe if you're Mensah, you're saying to yourself, I could probably do better than being QB 5 in 2027, and I could still make $4 million. If he declares for this draft goes over the top and it's like a really good draft for me for quarterbacks. If he does not declare for this draft, then he's a really interesting guy to watch for 2027. But this class does take a hit there, right? Him, if Lenore Sellers doesn't declare, then I think that if you're Mensah, you should definitely declare. If a Dante Moore doesn't declare, right, and he stays in college for another year, I think if you're Mensah, you got to take that opportunity, because then you could jump to quarterback 2 or 3 in this class. So I think we're going to be playing that game with Mensah of hey, who's going to declare, who's not going to declare. He's probably not going to go over Ty Simpson. He's probably not going to go over Mendoza, but if Dante Moore doesn't declare, I could see him going over and being QB3. For some teams, they're going to want to stay away from Lenore Sellers. Some teams are going to want to go after Lenore Sellers no matter what. He's going to be an interesting guy to watch. As far as other changes here, right? So those are my first round guys. Garrett Nussmeier, I think, is the only guy I have listed as a 2nd round pick. I only have Garrett Nussmeier ranked as a 2nd round pick because I know that coaches will love him. Or at least some coaches will love him. I hear conflicting things about, some of the other traits you want a quarterback to have with him, but we'll see how his pre-draft works out. The late day 2 guys, so 3rd round picks, Carson Beck, he's looking less and less like a 3rd round pick as each day goes by. John Mateer looking less and less like a 3rd round pick as each day goes by. Then you got guys who are day 3 picks. If you're basically in this list and you have eligibility left, I'd highly recommend you use it, right? Jaden Maeva, hey, it's back to school time, buddy. Kay Klubnik, Drew Aller, Luke Altheimer, they have no eligibility left. Same thing with Sam Levitt and Rocco Beck. So I think Jaden Maeva had a really strong start to the year, was really intriguing, has had a pretty rough go of it, and his tools were always going to be a problem. Yeah, he's got to go back to school. He's at the points where he can make more money in college than what he's going to make in the league. You come out early as a day 3 pick, you're only making a few $100,000, not a few $100,000, but $700,000-800,000. He's probably going to be able to make $2 million in the NIL portal. So if I were him, I would get that money and then go pro next year, in what could possibly be a weaker class than this year, where this class has some interesting names at the top. It's a better class I think people are giving it credit for in the middle and at the end. I think it's a more complete class than people think. I think there's a quarterback for every level of quarterback that a team would look to draft here. You got your projects in this class, your Sorsbys, your Lenore Sellers, you got your polished, but maybe the tools aren't the greatest guys in here, in like a Darien Mensah. Then you have like a Ty Simpson, Fernando Mendoza, Dante Moore. Those are going to be guys who kind of gravitate towards the top of your class. And then you got a lot of experienced guys who might be able to turn into solid game managers at the NFL level, maybe even starters, right? Like I think there's some Carson Wentz potential, not Carson Wentz, some Kirk Cousins potential between Carson Beck and John Mateer, Cade Klubnik, maybe Jaden Maeva, maybe Drew Eller, right? Luke Altimer. Like I think one of those guys are probably going to be a day 3 or day 2 pick, a late day 2 pick, or day 3 pick that possibly, starts for a team for a couple of years. I wouldn't be shocked if that happens. So I'm still high on this class. It wasn't the best week for this class, but the body of work is still pretty strong here. And a guy like Mensah, like he really makes or breaks the back end of the first round conversation, because boy, if he's there and that's your QB 4 or 5 in this class, I mean, you got to take a quarterback at that point. But that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. You have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.